Hi everybody, it is Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be reading some one-star reviews for some of my favorite books. I'm really interested to see how that's going to go, so let's jump right on in. First, I'm thinking that I'm going to do like some of my favorite authors and my favorite book by that author, so I figure I will start with Miss Lisa Jewell and The Night She Disappeared. Says 1, I guess the end in the first 40%. 2, very slow plot. Nothing happens in the entire book. The end comes far too late and is very disappointing. And 3, did not enjoy the book at all. Was waiting for it to end. I predicted the ending pretty early too, but that is typical for me. Like, probably 95% of the time, I will figure out the big twist relatively early. So, I don't know how common that is for them to do, but for me, that's not a red flag because it happens so much, and I don't hold it against the book when I do figure it out. So they have a valid point on that one, I guess. It didn't stick out to me, but if they have the type of reading experience where they normally can't do that, then yeah, maybe that's valid. Maybe that's valid. The slow plot, it's a little bit of a slow burn. But again, that's something that I personally really enjoy. I like the slow build-up and watching the characters develop and having the puzzle pieces pull together. It's just like the way that I like seeing a plot line done. So I wouldn't necessarily say the points in this are wrong. I do wish it was a little longer and a little bit more detailed so I could get a better idea of what they disliked about it. Okay, that was literally the only 1-star for this book, so I'm sorry that it was so short. I was hoping to react more for it, but I literally cannot find another 1-star, so I apologize. Next, we will be moving on to Ruth Ware, and my favorite book for her is The Turn of the Key. Should I put in DNFs? I found a DNF. I haven't found a 1-star. I might come back to it. Okay, here's one. I was hoping for something more than a strange, boring story that I found here. 1 out of 10 stars. That really doesn't tell us anything. So I can't really say, oh yeah, this is a good review. In my opinion, the story was not boring at all. There was stuff happening pretty much the entire time from page 1 to the very ending, especially the ending. But we'll see if we can find something else. I'm going to see if I can find that DNF from before. Because that was the only 1-star I saw. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, marked as DNF. DNF'd at 45%. How can a mystery thriller be this slow and this boring? It's a thriller. Give me action, suspense, and some character development instead. I happily spoiled myself for the ending, and I still didn't care. I just didn't care. Not wasting time on stories this year that don't have me invested by the time I'm almost halfway through. I'm so annoyed that this was such a flop. This wasn't really my experience. That's 2 now I've seen it said it was slow. I really didn't feel like it was slow. I felt like stuff was happening pretty much right away. It might not have been like in your face, but it's like there was a slow burn on a creep value that like gradually got worse. So maybe that's what they're talking about. But to me, that's not that nothing is happening at all. It's like it starts small and it gradually increases. So I'm a little confused by the slow because I didn't find it slow. I just I found it building. Maybe they were expecting the action to happen right out of the gate. And as far as the character development goes, I halfway see what they mean. Halfway. Because we really only focus on one adult character, and that is our nanny Rowan, and the rest are smaller children. And so it's like there's not going to be a lot of development with the children characters. They're there for a particular purpose. Could there have been a little bit more? Yeah, but we're talking like 8 and younger. So there was really only so much development that could be done with the kids. And with Rowan, I felt like there was great development. And she has this backstory, and like I thought it was really interesting. And so no, I don't really agree with this review. I feel like it's more of like what the first person said, but they just like elaborated a little bit more. But I still just I don't really agree with it. Okay, so next up, I want to look at reviews for my favorite book from 2022, The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James, and I'm a little scared of this one because I love that book so much, and I'm kind of afraid that I'm going to get heated if people say anything bad about it, so we'll have to see how I do on this one. Okay, so I didn't find any 1 stars, but here's a 2-star. Can a ghost story be boring? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. In the Sundown Motel, Vivian works the night shift at the front desk of a creepy motel. She sees some ghosts haunting the place and starts digging around. Soon she realizes that some of the deaths around town may be connected, but one night she disappears without a trace. 35 years later, her niece Carly shows up, hoping to figure out what happened to her aunt. Carly also gets a job as front desk clerk on the night shift. Soon, she's digging around and being hunted by ghosts too. The story bored me to sleep, literally. The problem is, if you take out the ghosts, not much happens, and the ghosts were mostly only there in the beginning of the story to precipitate the 2 girls' investigations. The majority of the story centers around Vivian and Carly, each in their own timeline, putting their lives on hold to bumble around, sticking their noses where they don't belong. In Vivian's case, she zeroes in on a guy solely because she has a gut feeling that he's a bad person. Let's think about this for a second. If he really was the guilty party, then she's going around following a killer. If he's not guilty, then she's just harassing and stalking an innocent person. I know stories have to have some sort of premise in order to tell their tale, but this just stretched beyond credibility. The 2 girls' parallel storylines have a lot of overlap, so it often feels like I'm being told something I already know, and it doesn't help that the 2 women have pretty much the same personality, extremely nosy and weirdly obsessed with digging into people's deaths beyond what is safe or healthy. More than once I forgot whose point of view I was reading, and it didn't really matter. It's like watching a campy horror movie where you could see the main character doing one stupid thing after another, and they just got more and more into trouble. And it's not clear why they are doing these things. Both can leave at any time, especially when weird stuff starts happening. I don't understand their motivations, and it prevented me from connecting with them. And even when the plot mercifully seems to have wrapped it up, it somehow kept going on some more. There were extra unnecessary characters and ghosts who seemed to have no purpose other than to make the story longer and more convoluted. Lots of people love this book, so this was clearly a case of it just not being the right match for me. I trudged on when I should have quit. I thought it would get better, and it never did. I just couldn't get into it. The whole thing was unbelievable, and it exhausted me. Okay, well, at least this person is admitting that they weren't the right match for this particular book, and they know that it has an audience. So it takes like a big reviewer to admit that, even when they're leaving a low review. So I will give them credit for that. And they do make some points in here. And at least they gave their opinion on why they disliked it. The point I will say that they do have a valid point on is Vivian in particular. She was like nosing around and focused in on this one random customer. So it's like she does have a point. It's like if he is guilty, she's being stupid and following him around. And if not, then she's stalking somebody. So it's like that's valid. That's valid. But when she's talking about how the characters have the same personality, Vivian and Carly. I wouldn't say she has the same personality, but she's trying to figure out what happened to her aunt. So she is putting herself into her headspace. So she gets the same job. She rents the same apartment. So it's like she's trying to put herself in her shoes and look through the lens of her aunt to try to figure out what happened. So I didn't feel like her personality was identical, but I feel like some of the stuff she did was identical, but there was a purpose to that, and it was made obvious why. And I actually thought that element of the story was really cool. I thought it was an interesting way to see it. And where it says that that they're just like sticking their noses into things that don't concern them. Vivian, maybe. The reason that she starts nosing around is something I kind of feel like is everybody's business, but I'm not going to say what that is in this video. But so it's like she could have given the information that she thought she had to the police, so that's true. That is true. She didn't have to go investigate it on her own. But saying that it's not her business, it's like it's everybody's business, you know? So that I don't really agree with. And in the case of Carly, I especially don't agree with it because she's trying to figure out what happened to her aunt, her family member that has been missing for 20-something years. So yeah, that's valid. She has a right to try to figure out what happened. So not her business? I don't think so. Okay, and next, I have a feeling that I'm going to find some interesting things for this one. The next one will be Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover that I read last year. I know she's a very controversial author. Some people really like her and some people really don't. So I'm sure there are going to be a lot of mixed reviews for this. Here we go. Right off the bat, I found a 1 star. So I hope these two have fun, but I'm out of here. DNF'd 50% in. Thank you for everyone who encouraged me to do this. I love you. Everyone who wanted me to finish. I have nothing to say to you. Oh my gosh. This will be the last Colleen Hoover book I'll ever read, and I already didn't even want to read this one. I was asked to. If someone points a gun at me and says, I won't kill you if you read a Colleen Hoover book, I will be like, guess today's the day I die then. Colleen and me don't vibe, never have, never will, and I honestly don't understand what y'all see in her books, but who am I to judge your reading tastes? Hope you're all having fun and enjoying life. I was told to see the bright side in things, so on the bright side, I now know what book to add to my worst reads of the year in December, so look forward to that. Yes, me DNFing at 50% in will not stop me from putting it into that ranking. Leave me alone. Why am I DNFing? Listen, I had to physically hype myself up to read every single sentence. Let's go, Jonathan. You can do this. You only have 99% left. It's not that bad. I was about to do some jumping jacks to get the adrenaline going. I was this close to tears several times, and not because Colleen's writing is in any way, shape, or form moving to me. It's because I don't even want to look at this, let alone read it. Here's what I liked. This scene. Does Cupcake Girl have a name? Everyone has a name. It has absolutely zero relevance to the plot. It's barely a scene, but people say to start criticism with something positive, so there you go. The list y'all actually want. There will obviously be spoilers. I'm not going to read the rest of that because I'm not going to spoil you guys in this, but we get the gist. This person doesn't like Colleen Hoover in general, not just this particular book, so yeah, that one was interesting. They feel very, very strongly about it, and I respect it. Here's another 1 star. DNF'd at 69%. I'm noticing the people that are marking it as 1 star didn't even finish it. Yes, I made it roughly 70% through this tragic book before I allowed myself the grace to stop reading it. I wanted to like it. I really did, I swear. But I had a lot of problems with it. Kenna has been in prison for the last 5 years for involuntary manslaughter. She hit her boyfriend with her car while drunk, wandered away from the crash site, leaving him for dead. When her prison sentence is over, she uses her savings to move to the small town where her 4-year-old daughter, Diem, resides with Scotty's parents. Kenna gave birth to her daughter at the very beginning of the prison sentence, and all of her rights were terminated. On her first night in the city, she goes to a bar where she meets a very handsome bartender. Only later, as she is kissing him, does she realize that he is her dead boyfriend's best friend. She keeps kissing him anyway, and they almost have sex in his truck. Ledger puts some pieces together early on in the book and figures out who Kenna really is. Aside from the whole still kissing Ledger when she knows he's her dead boyfriend's best friend thing, my heart truly went out to Kenna in this story. I think that's why I kept reading for as long as I did. I was waiting for someone to have empathy for her, to try to put themselves in her shoes and to forgive her. I mean, imagine how traumatic it would be if you accidentally killed the love of your life, and the only thing he left you with was immediately taken away from you as soon as it came into existence. This is freaking devastating. And no one in this book cares. It says it in a way that I can't put on YouTube, though. First things first, everyone in this book, except for Kenneth, Scotty, Lady Diana, and the grocery store manager, completely sucked. Ledger and Scotty's parents, bad. I did not like them. They all make Kenna out to be this cold-blooded murderer who hit Scotty with her car and then left him for dead on purpose because she was trying to get away with murder. Like, she was literally drunk. I get that they're upset about their son and they want someone to blame, and we are adults here, people. Frickin' adults. Act like it. Ugh. Okay, let's talk about Ledger. First of all, why does Colleen Hoover give all her characters made-up trailer trash names? Why? Aside from Ledger's incredibly ridiculous name, he is an awful human being. He's just plain selfish. I understand him acting the way he did when he didn't know who Kenna was, and maybe being a little upset she didn't say anything and kept kissing him when she figured out who he was. Understandable. What I don't understand is everything he did that came after that. He had no empathy for Kenna, is completely disgusted with her, and the whole time he goes on about how Kenna is just using him to get to DM, when he's the one who keeps randomly picking her up in his truck and inserting himself into her life. And then he offers her a job to help her out. Okay, but he only gives her the job because he has feelings for her, and the whole time he's being an ass to her and saying she's scum, and then he's getting all salty and possessive and when she talks to her coworkers. Please. Not to mention that he's her boss at this point, and he knows he's one of her only sources of income. He keeps putting her in sexual situations where it's arguably hard for Kenna to say no. And I know that Kenna likes Ledger for some reason. I know this, but it just seems so hypocritical of Ledger to tell Kenna that she's using him to get to her daughter when he's the one who's shoving his tongue down her throat and coaxing her into having sex with him. Also, Ledger kept harassing Kenna to show him the letter she writes to Scotty, and that is totally none of his business. She said no. When a woman says no, you don't keep asking her until she says yes. I feel like overall this was just executed poorly. The male lead was a hot and cold mess, and the romance felt forced. The point where I had to stop reading this was when Kenna and Ledger finally had sex. It just felt so off and weirdly paced. I wish this book had more prison stories and flashbacks with Scotty. Those were the parts that I actually enjoyed. Overall, disappointed. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, and let me just start right off the bat by saying their feelings are valid. This was a sucky situation. And like them, I personally also had a lot of empathy for Kenna. I cried so many times because I felt so bad for her, because they're completely right. It is tragic that something horrible that so happened and is obviously her biggest regret is constantly being held over her head after she has done her time. So, I mean, I completely agree with that. Had so much empathy for her, and what she was going through was completely sad. But at the same time, I also understood everybody else's point of view as well, particularly with Scotty's parents. They lost their son. You have to remember that. And it was because she was careless. It wasn't like it was just a random car accident. You know, she did something she wasn't supposed to be doing, and they lost their son as a result. And they're probably scared they're going to lose their granddaughter as well. So, I mean, it's like, I get it. It's more a level of fear. I never really got the impression from them that they thought she was evil, more like they just didn't trust her. And while I had empathy for Kenna, I had empathy for them as well, because I'm like, they're like, well, she has a history of doing this, and then it led to destruction once, and this time there's a child involved. I understand the point of view. Do I necessarily agree with it? No. I remember thinking when I was reading this that they could have at least agreed to supervised visits, like maybe not done overnight stuff. At least let her see her, but like in a supervised setting, like at their house or something. So I didn't agree with what they were doing, but I understood it. And then as far as Scotty goes, And then as far as Ledger goes, I'm torn on their statements about him, because I could see how someone could see it that way, but at the same time, I really didn't. He does get very, very angry when he finds out that, who she is. And he does think that she is using him to get to DM, because if I remember correctly, he's her godfather. So, and the fact that she didn't tell him right away once she realized who he was, that was mostly what he was mad about. It wasn't that he thought she sought him out or anything, because that really wasn't how it was. It was more like she didn't tell him who she really was. And that's what made him think that she was keeping secrets and using him. If she had told him right away, I don't think he would have felt like that. And again, he lost his best friend, somebody he actually considered a brother. So he's kind of on the same fence as the parents, and he lost somebody he cares about, and he's grieving, and it's technically this person's fault. And he's grappling with his feelings. He has feelings for her, but he doesn't understand why he does. And he is still angry about what happened, but he does like her a lot. And he gives her a job because he wants her to turn her life around so she can be involved with DM. He just doesn't want to feel like he's in the middle, and he doesn't want to feel like he is being used, is number one. But he is supportive of her, but he wants her to prove herself first. And I don't think that's unreasonable at all. And this person complaining that he's putting her in sexual situations, they're dating. You know, it's like, yeah, I mean, they do stuff, but they're dating. I never got the impression that it was like, well, I'm not going to do this if you don't do this. You know, I don't feel like he was like offering her particular things, like when it come to her kid, in exchange for services. I never got that. I never got that feeling off of it at all. It was just more like he was conflicted with how he felt. He wanted his relationship with her to be separate from her relationship with DM. So it was just like he didn't want to feel like that she was only with him because of that. He wanted it to be separate. So while I can see where they're coming from, I don't necessarily agree with it, and that was not my personal reading experience. Okay, so now we're going to get into another one that kind of scares me, and that is The Shining by Stephen King. The Shining has been one of my favorite books of all time for a very, very long time, and it's one of his more successful books, but I do know there are people out there that don't like it. It's particularly people that don't like ghost stuff. That's been my experience. People that don't like ghost stuff do not like The Shining. I'm kind of scared to see people talk bad about this one, but let's see what happens. Here we go. The first one, sorry, I'm going to go across for The Shining. King describes my relationship with this book very well. His relationship with his father had been like the unfurling of some flower of beautiful potential, which when wholly open turned out to be a blighted inside. My first Stephen King and my first proper horror novel will be my last. I certainly didn't expect to be bored, but I was. After 338 pages, 2/3 of the book, I decided life's too short to waste on books I don't enjoy. If you want sinister snow, I suggest The Castle instead. Ooh. Potential. The basic plot, family alone and cut off in spooky house, may not be original, but it started off quite intriguingly, with more literal demons of alcohol, cycles of abusive parenting, and a lonely child trying to understand the perplexities of adult world. The fact the child, 5-year-old Danny, can read minds and has hallucinations and premonitions makes the gap between what he sees/knows and understands all the greater. The love a child can feel for an abuser is a strong theme early on. Jack had loved him for as long as he was able, long after the rest of the family could only hate and fear him, and he's terrified of alienating Danny. Similarly, Wendy's troubled relationship with her jealous mother is echoed in the way she envies Danny's closeness to his father. Jack is a recovering alcoholic still struggling to stay on the wagon. I assume he gives in later in the book. And although he's never had any paranormal experiences before, he seems to experience some here. Or maybe it's clinical. What's the difference between paranormal, Danny, and real but distorted perception, Jack? There were also nods to Alice in Wonderland, very indirect, and Bluebeard, explicitly. All these ideas could be fascinating and disturbing, but they didn't really go anywhere, especially after things started jumping out at them. Join the dots. Once the family were alone in the Overlook Hotel, it became increasingly and infuriatingly formulaic. The build up to something scary, then the relief of everyone pulling through with only minor damage, then the next something scary, perhaps a variant on a previous one, or maybe something new, each one slightly worse than the previous, interspersed with the odd false alarm. The scary things included all the obvious ones, and actually I can't think of any non-obvious ones. But maybe they came in the final third of the book. All this was interspersed by lazy exposition of what should have been interesting backstory. The dirty dealings in the hotel, organized crime, prostitutes, murder, were revealed by a convenient scrapbook, and Jack and Wendy's inner struggles with their own parents and with each other are explained like an introductory psychology primer. Jack wondered if the reason he did X was because of Y. Show, don't tell. There was a lot of showing in this book. What the hell is this person even talking about? Okay. Language. There were plenty of weak cliches. His pride was all that was left. A child feeling like a puppet in adult games. Danny being the key to everything, just like the key in a clock. And several weird typos and missing words. This book so many times I practically know it like the back of my hand. No missing words. If something was missing, it was because it was part of the dialect, and that was the way that the character talked. It wasn't like that in just exposition. On the other hand, I really laughed at the description of a lift elevator that wheezed vibratoriously up the shaft. Danny keeps seeing and hearing this, and he knows it's bad and scary. But it's a mystery with a capital M. The revelation of what and why it meant was the final straw for me, such an anticlimax, and it doesn't even make sense in the way that it's described. Why I read this and why I almost certainly won't read King again. One of the things I enjoy about Goodreads is the way it has broadened my reading and deepened it too. There are many wonderful books I've read purely because friends with similar tastes have raved about them. I gradually noticed quite a few friends whose literary tastes overlap with mine rate King quite highly as a writer. I began to question my avoidance of horror and King, and canvassed advice as to which to read. I wanted to enjoy this, to find a new writer and genre to enjoy, and to prove that I should have read King sooner. Perhaps that's why I stuck with it as long as I did. That and residual guilt from childhood indoctrination, never to give up on a book. Even Jack, who wanted to write a book about the hotel, skimmed the scrapbook, so that mitigates my guilt a little. I'm still grateful for the advice about reading King. The advice I've confirmed that King isn't for me is useful knowledge, which is an improvement on uninformed prejudice. And then there's a list of quotes that they didn't like. Okay, so I'm going to try to be tactful here, because that was very, very, very long. This person openly admits that they've never read King before, and that they've never even read horror before, and even said that they have been putting off reading horror. And quite honestly, it seems to me that they just don't like horror. Because some of the stuff that they were mentioning that bothered them are things that the horror community eats up. So, yeah, that one I really, really can't agree with. The way that I kind of look at it is, if you don't like a genre, don't force yourself to read it, and then leave a 1-star review for the book. You need to know what your own reading tastes are, and not try to do what everybody else is reading. It really sounds to me like this person read Stephen King because Stephen King is popular, and Stephen King is probably 85% horror. He does have some books that are not as freaky and that this person might have enjoyed more. If this person had actually known their own reading tastes, then this might not have been a problem for them. They may have found the right book, but this clearly wasn't if you do not like horror. It's classic horror. So take that with a grain of salt. Try not to be too hard on them, but this is just a matter of not knowing what you want to read. And I guess we all go through that, but I think the majority of us, if we take a chance and read something that's outside of our comfort zone, we don't usually turn around and write a 1-star review when we don't even know the genre. Okay, so that is all that I have for you guys today. That is just some of the low-rated reviews from of some of my favorite books. And that is all that I have for you guys today. If you liked this video, please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, follow me on the social medias. Click that bell if you want to be notified of all of my upcoming videos. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.